Hi, this is Dina for Splitcoaststampers. In this tutorial, I'll show you how to add some dimension and pop to your word-shaped dies. We'll start with the basics, and then I'll show you some variations for using 1 and 2 word dies, and for changing the angle of your spotlight. To begin, position your die and tape it in place before cutting. Once you have it cut, remove the die carefully and be sure to save all the little tiny pieces inside of the loops of the letters. You're going to need those later. To create the spotlight look with the die cut opening, you'll need to choose a single point to start from. For this sample, I've started in the center, and from that center point, I'm just going to begin connecting the point with the edge of each curve in the word, and from each point in the die. From the curves and points at the bottom of the opening, I'm connecting directly to the point. From the points that are above the opening, I'm just drawing down to the opening and not continuing those lines. Each time you position your ruler to a new line or curve or point in your die cut opening, make sure that you reposition your ruler to line up with the point at the bottom. The next step is to take a marker or colored pencil and color in all the shapes that you created with the lines that you drew. I have a second die cut, and to prepare my panel for that piece to fit in just like a little puzzle piece, I'm putting double stick tape along the opening across the back, and that will create a sticky little bed for that piece to just slide right into. Those tiny pieces from the insides of the loops will also need to be colored in, and you can decide whether you want to color them before you replace them or after. If you have a light touch with your markers, it's almost easier to color the pieces after you replace them into your die cut. When they're super tiny like this, it's really hard to keep them still. One tip for getting the small pieces placed correctly into your die cut piece: if you have them still stuck into the die or in another die cut piece where they're still in place, you can just lay that right over the piece in your panel and just press the smaller pieces right into the opening, and they'll stick right into the adhesive that's exposed right there. If the pieces have already come loose, you can pick them up with the end of a craft knife or a sticky tool and just press them into place. Here's a look at my completed project. Here's a variation on the technique using 2 word dies. The steps are basically the same. On this piece, I've chosen a focal point to the corner, and just as I did before, I'm going to connect my focal point with the edge of each curve and each point in my die opening. For the curves and points that are above the die cut opening, I'm going to line up with the point in the corner, but not continue my line past openings in the die cut below. Here's a look at the completed piece and also how I incorporated it into a finished project. If you're working with 2 dies, you can also create a central focal point and have the lines radiate from the center instead of all going in the same direction. To begin, you'll want to center your dies and position them at equal distances from the center of your panel. Once you've made all your cuts and set all your pieces aside, you'll want to mark the center point of the panel and then add lines in the same way that we did before. Each time you make a line, make sure that your ruler is lined up with the focal point. When you're ready to add your lines toward the die cut opening on the bottom of your panel, the concept is still going to be the same, but the directions are reversed. So before, where you were making lines to the bottom of the die cut opening, now you'll be making lines from the center point to the points and curves at the top of the die cut opening. Also, the lines that connect the curves and points toward the bottom of the die cut opening will stop when they run into the opening. If that's confusing to you, it may help you just to flip your panel 180 degrees and make your lines go to the top as you did before. In a perfect world, all those lines that we're drawing would come to a tiny little point, and that would be really pretty on our cards. But in case your focal point looks like mine and gets a little bit too inky or you miss, please don't beat yourself up. Take the opportunity to add an embellishment and hide that ugly point behind a flower or another die cut. You'll notice that in most of my samples I hid my point behind die cuts or other embellishments on my card, and that's absolutely fine. I have one more variation for this technique, and I probably should have shared this one first because it's a lot simpler than the other variations. For this variation, the lines that you're drawing are parallel, and I found that a drafting triangle worked best for keeping them in line with each other. It was easy to line up the straight edge along the bottom edge of the cardstock. If you don't have a drafting triangle, just cut a piece of cardstock into a triangle and use that to line up your lines. This is a really fun technique with a lot of options, and I really hope you'll give it a try. Thank you so much for watching.